Hello everyone! After 4 spooky seasons, Nancy Drew has come to an end. While its early cancellation will join the list of things I will forever be salty about, today we're not focusing on that. No, I want to appreciate what we got. So today, I'm going to be going over my top episodes of Nancy Drew. Now, please note that when I say top, I don't necessarily mean best. These are just the episodes that I personally enjoy watching the most. I recognize that objectively there are episodes that are probably better, but I have no interest in being objective today. Getting your guys' comments has been really fun so far, so I would love to hear you guys gush about episodes that I missed, or hear you agree with me why I am just so brilliant and right. This video was originally supposed to be a top 10 of the entire series, except then it was getting way too long. So today we're going to be covering seasons 1 and 2, but stay tuned because another video with seasons 3 and 4 will be coming. I have things to say. In the meantime, let's get started with season 1.
Hero of Horseshoe Bay. Hero of Horseshoe Bay's friends.
Episode 110, The Mark of the Poisoner's Pearl. This is a great ensemble episode, which is appropriate because if I had to pick a theme for this episode, it would be about the strength of choosing connections with the people around you. This is the episode where Ace first returns after his coma, and that means 4 of our main cast are dedicated to being all in on this crew. But first, we're going to talk about Nancy, who is already full of issues on relying on everyone else, but she's fresh off of feeling super guilty for getting her dad arrested. But she's also got weighing on her things like Ace getting hurt right after she reamed him out, George's sister getting kidnapped by the ghost after Nancy's seance, Nick breaking up with her. She's just doubling down on trying to fix everything on her own and putting all the danger on her, which her friends are not about to let her do. Then you've got Bess finally finding out for sure that she is a Marvin, so she's finally got the confirmation on that blood family that she's been looking for. But at the same time, they show that she's been building this other family too, when right away they show Nick stepping in to save her from Owen getting upset about the coins being destroyed. The theme of connection is even brought in with this episode's villain, you could call her, Claire the Poisoner, who is absolutely captivating to watch, by the way. She's so creepy in the best way. But her entire motivation is to try and artificially bring herself closer to people in their moments of death. This whole theme is so consistent through the whole episode, and that's just very satisfying. But let's get into some of the more specific things I liked about this episode. The entire scene at the Claw, where they're preparing this party for Ace, is so sweet. It's clearly a group effort, but it's kind of implied that maybe this was George's idea. She's the one who's sort of rushing around fussing over decorations and worrying about whether Nancy brought the flowers, which is sweet because it's a little bit out of character for George to be so worried about planning this party just right. George and Ace are one of my favorite duos on the show. I really like characters who seem totally different on the surface, but underneath they sort of get each other and how they cope with things and see the world. And they have that past together that these two are the ones that have been working at the Claw the longest. All the reunions with Ace, though, are really sweet. You really get the feeling that these guys are friends by now. Nancy and Ace get to be awkward together after that fight the last time they saw each other. This weird tension between them is kind of the first moment that made me go, what's going on here? Is the implication of this scene that Nancy drove Florence? We're just gonna skip right over that? Complex parental relationships are clearly a big theme on this show, and the relationship between Tom and Ace is one of my personal favorites. They clearly care about each other. The night that Ace almost lost his dad is still his most traumatizing memory. They just don't know how to communicate. I wouldn't say Ace is my favorite character. If you ask me to pick, I honestly can't. It changes from moment to moment. But he does feel very familiar to me in my early 20s. I love the scene where Nancy makes Ace record the message to the murderer, and he goes through like, what the hell is she doing? Oh my god, Nancy. Bro, you better get used to this feeling because it's gonna be your life now. So Nancy is trying to solve this all on her own and be a martyr, but her friends are not having it, which is fantastic. I love the scene where she's like, no, everyone who helps me gets hurt, and I don't want that for you guys, and George is just like, anyways, shut up, and Ace is like, anyways, now that we're helping.
My friends will come and get us out of here.
You told them to leave.
Yeah, but they don't ever listen to me.
I really like this box within a box sort of situation that they end up in, where they're all separated, but they each still have to do their part, because if any one of them hadn't been here, this wouldn't have worked out. Nancy's near-death hallway sequence is really well done. It's just so quiet and unsettling with Nancy by herself while it keeps cutting back to George and Nick freaking out as they're trying to save her. And then slowly we see Lucy appear after all this time. And the lights turn on back behind her and you start to hear George's voice. And then there's the Lucy jump scare of all time. Oh my god, this one still gets me. I have to turn the sound down. And then the scene where they're back at Nancy's house, she is unintentionally the funniest person of all time. Bess is like, you literally died, and Nancy tries to change the subject to, hey, why did you guys come after me? Somebody could have gotten hurt. Like, Nancy, it was you! You got hurt! We just established this! You would have died without them. Nancy! Some final little details. The newspaper article, if you pause and look at it, it's super funny that they have a full picture of him, but to avoid giving Ace a full name, they do not ever name him in the article. They just keep calling him the dishwasher and the hero, like it's like third-hand gossip. There's also this little article off to the side where some writer is just rhapsodizing for several paragraphs about coffee to fill space. It also mentions Larkspur Lane down at the bottom, which is where we'll be going in just a few episodes here. Episode 114, The Sign of the Uninvited Guest. This one used to be my favorite. It's a little bit more complicated now, but there's just really nothing here I don't like. It has one of the funniest lines in the entire show while we're in the claw.
You know what is so romantic? Solving a homicide together. With me.
The climax of this episode is the reenactment of the night that Tiffany died, which is just such a cool scene on so many levels. The music, everyone weaving their side of things together, and you see both how far they've already come as characters and friends, and finally put together the pieces of that night. And the reveal hits like a bomb, with everyone just being devastated over the realization that they indirectly killed this woman. The scene where Nancy's confronting Ryan in the rain and then Lucy appears and she's just getting closer and closer. Oh my god, it's so creepy and so good. And at the time, you're like, oh, Ryan's getting what he deserves, but rewatching it, you're like, oh, he was actually in love with her and this actually really sucks to get this all revealed to him like this. That's rough, buddy. What a character turnaround on Ryan, by the way. We're not going to talk about it right now, but like, seriously. We get the reveal that Josh is behind the poisoning. I know a lot of people who were fans of Nancy Drew were upset about the ghost thing being real and everything, but I do love that for the show, it is still really about people. Like, the ghosts are here, but they're just flavor text. At the end of the day, something like this with Josh is about love. He loved his sister, he loved his mom, he's a good boss to Nick. It just got twisted. The scene in the garage is admittedly a little Looney Tunes. I remember the first time watching it just being like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god! But it's fine. On the character side of things, the whole storyline with Nancy and Ace and Laura going out to investigate is just so much fun. Ace really has a type, doesn't he? They do this thing that I love where they hint at this whole world for Ace just off screen with all the library stuff and his rival and teenage hacker shenanigans. They're sitting under the mystery section. Nancy also just seems to find Ace amusing, which is very fun to watch. I love that not for a second does she actually believe he's moving to Paris. Speaking of, though, we don't really see Ace ask for help very often, so the way that he sort of half asks Nick for advice about what to do about Laura without actually asking him is just kind of sweet. And it is good advice. Nick is just like, dude, you can't keep not making a decision. And so Ace finally does. He stops just going with the flow and puts his foot down and says, hey, this matters to me and I'm going to stay. Good job, man. The only sort of weak point of the episode for me is we've got the subplot of Bess with Amaya threatening her relationship with Elizabeth. It feels like it's a part of the overall problem of the writers not really having a strong idea of what to do with Bess, but it does give us some nice scenes of her and George, so that's nice. Overall, still a 10 out of 10 for me. For Season 1 honorable mentions, I have 2 with very different reasons.
Your axe is huge, dude.
The first is the subplot from 112, The Lady of Larkspur Lane, with Ace bringing Carson from prison, because it is so funny. The contrast between Ace being competent enough to rig this entire spur-of-the-moment plan, and then his step 2 is just, I don't know, we'll wing it. My other choice is 107, The Tale of the Fallen Sea Queen, which came very close to making this list. In particular, there are 2 really intense scenes for Nancy in this episode, one being the scene where she confronts Ace over being a narc, and the other being the breakup with Nick. There's just this painful car crash leading up to it all episode, all season so far, really. And then the scene where Nick finally ends it is just devastating. Part of what helps this scene for me is just knowing the friendship that these two are going to build coming out of this. I have a real soft spot for fictional exes who find their way to being friends. It's like, you were always meant to mean a lot to me, just not like this. But let's move on to Season 2.
I face the mystery of this journey with courage because it is with you.
If that's not the mission statement for this show, I don't know what is. Season 2, Episode 5, The Drowned Woman. This episode was apparently supposed to be the Season 1 finale before the Backstreet Boys World Tour hit the Earth, and accordingly, it just hits the ground running and does not stop. This episode honestly feels like it shouldn't work when I think about just the amount of things that happen. Specifically, the fact that they managed to have 2 final battle scenes against the Aglaika, and both of them feel high stakes and stressful enough and different enough that they don't feel redundant. Like, that's really impressive, honestly. In the first one, after everything they've gone through together and tried to solve this problem, now they're split apart and they have a plan that they sort of think is going to work, but the implication is maybe at least one person is going to be sacrificed just to weaken the Aglaika so that the rest have a chance. And that's unacceptable. You want all of them to get through this and get back together again. The way that they split apart... Okay, I didn't mean to get to this so early. I'm pretty good at suspending disbelief. I like to enjoy things. If I see that a narrative is trying to do something, even if it doesn't quite land, I will give them some pretty good leeway on, alright, I get what you're trying to do. The fight that splits up the Drew crew, I don't like it. It's bad. Here are my problems with the scene. Putting aside the fact that they are straight up factually wrong because Nancy tried to back out of doing the ritual once it became clear that they would be involved, and they were the ones who insisted on doing it anyway, it feels like the scene is trying to say something like, this is the cost of being friends with Nancy Drew. But that only works if you somehow then turn it around and say, but that's worth it. Which they never get around to doing. And the thing is, they know how to do this because they did it already. Ace doesn't chime in this scene because him and Nancy already hashed this out at the beginning of the season. He was mad because their life is in danger and he was blaming her for it. But the thing is, Ace didn't come off like he was right in that scene. It's jarring to see him being so mean, especially to Nancy. And then at the end it turns out that he's just dealing badly with the fact that he's scared and worried because for the first time in his life he has something worth caring about, and that's what he's actually blaming Nancy for. Ace was a guy who just didn't really have much to care about at the beginning of the series. Now he does, and it's right as he's about to lose it. Which is an understandable motivation, but he's still being a jerk about it? What I came out of that with was, this is not a good way for him to be dealing with his feelings, but regardless of the fact that he's upset, he's still sticking by Nancy. He still believes that she's going to get them out of this. And more than that, he's still personally worried about her safety enough that he doesn't want her putting herself in unnecessary danger. None of that comes across in the group scene, and that's what's so disappointing to me. Especially since this episode has Nancy at her Nanciest in ways that I really love. She is so focused on trying at the last minute to solve all of this and save everybody. Like when it turns out that Bess got rid of all the Aglaika sand at her house, and Nancy's just like, it's fine, I don't have time to be upset about this right now, we're just going on solutions only, and just going full tilt on anything she thinks might be a solution here, and it's like, guys, come on! But it's one part of an otherwise spectacular episode, so I'm gonna keep moving. There are so many great little human moments that we get in this episode as they're all facing down their possible last hours on Earth. I love the scene we get with George and her sisters. Her dynamic with Jessie is really interesting to me. George has always been this partial mom figure to her sisters, and now that Jessie is getting older, she's kind of hoping that if something happens to her, Jessie will be able to take over. Which obviously, Jessie shouldn't have to do, and she's not quite ready for it. But she is growing up in other ways that help her be more supportive to George in a way that it feels like George hasn't really had before. They start to feel more like sisters rather than George just being the pseudo-mom figure. Let's talk about Nick, because he absolutely kills it in this episode. First of all, major points for having the idea to modify his truck to give them an edge against the Aglaika. The scene before the Aglaika attacks and they're all talking on the phone about their regrets, and Nick makes the confession that he hasn't made as much progress on Tiffany's crusade against the Hudsons as he wanted because he doesn't want to be a sacrificial lamb and he just wants to live his life, just hits me in the gut. His scene later, where he meets up with Ryan at night to give him the flash drive and rope him into this, is such a cool scene. The lighting, the music, the way he delivers it, particularly the chilling line that he gives an unsure Ryan of,
I'm hoping that you feel different tomorrow.
Because he might be dead. Oh, it's so good. And of course, the scene with George being impaled at the end. Guys, I've seen this scene a million times, and it still makes me cry. In large part because everyone is devastated here, but Nick's world is just ending. His absolute desperation is just... How does Tunji not have just a million awards? He is so good, you guys. Everyone on this show is good. I legitimately love all of them, but sometimes watching Tunji, you're just aware that you're seeing something special. I am really looking forward to seeing what else he does. Since we're here, let's talk about the harpoon scene. It's really fascinating to examine everyone's reactions here and what it says about their character. You've got Nancy, who's always a little bit slow to react to emotional things because it's just processing for her, but she's still right up close to be there for Nick. So much so that she ends up being part of George's half of the love confession, which is an insane fact that I absolutely love. Bess is a little bit hysterical, not knowing what to do, and she gets almost desperate trying to keep what's left of them together when Nancy starts to run off. And then there's Ace, whose number one instinct is always to help. He's almost numb when he asks Nick, and when Nick rejects his help, he goes to comfort Bess instead. And the way that by the time Nancy comes back, when there's just nothing any of them could do, they're all just separated in their corners, just grieving on their own. Ooh. But of course, Nancy still can't turn her brain off, and the thing that her and George most have in common is their stubbornness. Nancy is not going to give up when there's even a sliver of hope left. So when she remembers that one little detail from the Keeper's log, she runs back and does anything she can to take it, regardless of the consequences. It's such a good character trait that comes through so strongly here. Speaking of Hannah's book, we do get a quick glimpse at it. I don't think much comes back, except that we do see the cursed Victorian bridal gown, which will come back in the Less Dress episode, obviously. And they say that the shroud was put into the archive boxes to protect it in 1987, which does match how they say later that the previous owner was revived in 1986. I didn't notice until this very rewatch, but the spot where George dies and they revive her is exactly the spot where they all argued earlier, so that's pretty cool. I do really like that the key to stopping the Igleika ended up being those love letters that connected back to Odette the person. And how, in order for it to work, they weren't just throwing the lines in her face, but they had to say it by heart and mean it. Because yes, George, I'm sorry, you are in a show where love is the thesis statement, but more than that, it's about connecting to Odette, who everything she cared about was so erased and ignored, and them acknowledging those things and saying those were real, they mattered. Nancy in particular reaching out to her and saying, "You are not what was done to you. You are not your trauma," is really lovely. And it's part of what makes me upset about Odette later, that she's so rude to Nancy, because Nancy was really the one who was trying the hardest with her. Anyways. In the related category of Nancy can just not catch a freaking break, with the first attack, when Odette lays off, everyone is okay, except for Nancy, who is still falling off a cliff. God, what haven't I talked about? The dads. The scene where Carson and Ryan are respectfully following Nancy to try and figure out what's going on with her is a fantastic scene all around. It's first of all really funny, especially once Nancy catches on to them. Every single line delivery just makes me laugh.
Do you have a vacuum in your trunk?
That's not weird, right? I keep a dustbuster in my car just in case.
But it's also a good scene for both of their characters, their relationship together, moving along their particular relationships with Nancy. Overall, just a really good little inclusion of the dads in this. And of course, the scene where Nancy goes and finally reconciles with Carson is just heartbreaking. I feel like being a parent to Nancy Drew has got to be so stressful. She's just doing her own thing so often, and all you can do is just try and be there for her as much as you can. And Carson is really trying. I'll gush more about Carson in like a minute when we get to, I think it's the next episode on my list.
Do you trust me?
Why? Also, yes.
Season 2, Episode 9, The Bargain of the Blood Shroud. Speaking as a fan of when characters make bad decisions out of completely in-character motives, I really enjoy this episode. There's really no story thread here that I don't enjoy. The sequence that sort of kicks off the plot with everyone but Bess trying to figure out what happened to the shroud that could kill George is so great. I love that Ace and Amanda are like off in this little rom-com by themselves and everyone else is still stuck in the supernatural drama and they're so mad at him about it. Really, you just have to look at everyone's faces through the whole thing. There's just not a single one that is not gold. I just noticed this random guy in the background just watching their drama with his little drink. I love that while stealing the shroud that could literally kill George, Gil stopped to also snag a pie.
Hey, forget the pie, okay?
Poor Nick in this episode, though. He realized that the whole Odette situation is happening. He's like, what the hell do we do? Like, he's just still figuring this out, and now George might die before they even, like, figure out what to do. I love this moment where George kind of gives Gil a chance to say that he didn't know it was going to kill her before she's like, oh, yeah, no. And then this scene is just really well done, where Ace and Nancy are both talking to their respective twin and trying to get the story about what happened to their mother. You get a little bit of everybody's personality. You get some of Gil and Amanda from how they're telling it, and you get Ace and Nancy from how they're doing their questioning. I like that even when Nancy's making the questionable decision to get attached to Gil, I can understand how it fits for her character. She's sympathizing with him. And I just really love Amanda, you guys. I hope she gets to go on to live a good life after all this, because she deserves it. And then in the background, you've got poor Bess with her storyline of trying to recover from losing the Marvins. And it's a little bit overdramatic and funny.
I'm sorry. Is my crying too loud?
What? No.
But it does hit the right note for me of, you know, sometimes when things suck, you just gotta wallow in it. But at the end of the day, life does go on. And right as she's feeling like she's lost the only chance at family she's ever had, Carson comes along and he's just like the top dad of all time. I love this man so much. He's just meant to be a dad. Like, Lucy on that cliff handed him a baby and he was just like fulfilling his destiny. I also loved that with Bess here and Ace earlier in the series, when they're asking him how he's doing, he doesn't talk down to them, he's honest with them as an adult to an adult. Also, I always come out of this wanting Bess's sweater and wanting a grilled cheese. Do we have any bread? And towards the end of the episode, we get to these two great scenes with Nick and Bess, who are one of my underrated duos. I love the amount of trust that they show each other while they're on the cliff, even with George's life at stake. And when Nick begs for George's life and says that he's going to follow Odette off the cliff, I don't care that they've only known each other for like a couple weeks and this show has the most insane timeline. Like, Tunji sells it and they make me believe in love. Speaking of, we also get one of the best Ace and Nancy scenes in the show. The really good thing about this scene is that it's about how well they know each other, but it's not just them saying it, the entire scene is showing it. And there's something great about it ending with Ace being like, you don't have to go make this bad decision, you really don't have to. And Nancy's like, yeah, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And then they just kind of nod at each other and she leaves. She's such a messy protagonist, I really love her.
Good hike?
Episode 212, The Trail of the Missing Witness. This episode was always going to be on the list because I love Grant beyond any explainable reason. He just gives off this air that he is so woefully unprepared for any of this, and yet he is trying his absolute best. He's dryly funny, he's scared but he does it anyway. He gets a scene with Nancy where he pulls the incredibly Nancy Drew move to her face of avoiding thinking about your feelings by focusing on the task at hand. I also just love the fact that Grant came to Horseshoe Bay, got this involved with the Drew crew, and left without ever getting the revelation that the supernatural is real. That is just so funny. I would give so much to see his tour of the archive boxes. Like, did Nancy explain? What did he think? I have questions. Oh, and put this on the list of episodes that we were robbed of. An episode from the perspective of the kitchen staff as they are just trying to earn their paychecks and mind their own business while management is doing whatever the hell they are doing in the background. I wanted that episode so badly, it would have been so good. Like, just look at Grant. He's been here a week and he already knows how things work around here. And the scene at the end where Grant finally connects with Tom just makes me cry every single time. The implication that Ace taught him how to introduce himself in sign language so they could meet properly and they prepared, and this was a scene we didn't get to see, and I'm fine about it. I only started watching the show in time for this season's finale, so I wasn't in the fandom when everyone was speculating that Tamura was actually Ace's brother. In retrospect, that actually is a theory that I really like, but I'm not heartbroken that it didn't turn out to be true because we got Grant, so. I'm gonna loop around to the rest of the Drew crew before I get to Ace and Nancy so we can finish this off with a bang, I guess. Nick and George's first scene in this episode is actually one of my favorites for them. It's just very simple and sweet and domestic. It's nice that after working to clear up their misunderstandings in the previous episode, this one really has them feeling like a team. In the beginning, they discuss their plans for the day, and then even as they have their separate storylines, they kind of keep checking back in with each other over the course of it. And the bit with George trying to cheer up Nick with the trophy from the claw is very cute. Like, of course the drama can be fun and all, but these sweet in-between moments of them just being best friends in love and supporting each other and being genuinely excited for the things that the other person is excited for is just really lovely. I just noticed this booth says the other clam chowder, like, is that their claim to fame? Bess and Odette are fine. I'm not immune to the romance of secret letters, even though it was kind of a terrible plan. But I'll admit, I'm just not wild about Odette. She rubbed me the wrong way.
She's just so mean.
I care because Bess cares, and I like Bess. We've also got George and Jesse teaming up on behalf of the Claw, and I'm always down for time with the fan sisters, but this is also just kind of a perfect little storyline from a writing perspective. In the beginning, Jesse's ideals are clashing against George's pragmatism, but even with that, Jessie is supporting her sister the whole way through, and she really comes through for George in the end in a way that works out for the both of them. My heart is warmed. Speaking of ideals clashing, though, Ace and Nancy. Oh boy! On the lighthearted side of things, I like the part where Nancy's like, hey, we need some serious equipment. And Ace is like, oh, I got that. And then it cuts to them in the garage and Ace is like, so I don't actually have any of that. Ace. Oh god, he would do anything for her. But he won't do that. And by that I mean trade his own life for a list of innocents and a favor for Celia Hudson. This is such a juicy conflict for them. I always love discovering what makes characters angry because it says so much about them, especially for normally chill characters like Ace. We've already seen a hint of this at the top of the season with Ace getting mad at Nancy and turning out that he was just worried, but this is that turned up to 11. Nancy putting all those people at risk already rankled him, but the fact that for his sake Celia Hudson now has power over her, oh, he does not like that. And he doesn't know how to deal with that, so he just gets mad about it. And by the time he processes it in the next episode and tries to fix it, it's too late! It's very good.
If we can find out how something was born, we can understand how it needs to die.
So do we just ask it?
218, The Echo of Lost Tears. The end of Season 2 has some odd episodes, but man does it finish strong. The whole crew is finally back together and mainly focused on one goal, which gives the episode a great driving force. And the entire dreamscape sequence is a masterful piece of storytelling, an opinion that I obviously have, because I may have done an entire video on it, should you care to watch that, if you haven't already. I talk about it in that video, but The Wraith is a rare example of a metaphor for mental health that actually works, because Nancy still deals with her own trauma, in addition to fighting the ghost. Nancy encouraging Carson to go be a dad to Ryan makes me tear up every dang time, and then at the end when she comes home to them both, it just warms my heart so much. I love this little family. And on the list of things we deserved, I'm gonna put a My Two Dads spin-off. I was picturing short little webisodes that are just these two doing their relatively normal dad things as, like, Ryan learns to be a functioning human being, and the Drew crew does their weird ghost shit in the background. Like, I'm telling you, it would have been gold. The Season 4 reveal that Ace both had and was aware of his feelings for Nancy this whole time makes his behavior in this episode make even more sense in hindsight. He's so worried about Nancy, he really wants to be there for her, but he also really does care about Amanda, and he's worried about her with Gil, so you see him going back and forth between trying to help Nancy and then trying to go back and push for things to be great with him and Amanda. He is really trying to do what he thinks is best for everyone. Emphasis on trying. Speaking of the Bobbsies, though, the way this episode dealt with Gil is probably my one note. It just felt like he jumped pretty abruptly from manipulative but charming to a flashing red flag just to move the plot along. But there is a lot of plot going on, so I'm like, yeah, okay, sure, let's keep moving. I actually do enjoy Odette in this episode. She has some funny improv about zebras, and her being the helicopter ghost for George is sweet. And the scene where she goes to say goodbye to Bess, just, it gets to me. It's emotional, and that spinning shot of them kissing is very cool. And then there's the scene where George proposes to Nick. Ugh, this scene, it's like on the one hand, George is rushing into this, but on the other, she never rushes into anything, and this scene is beautiful. The lighting and the colors to start with, and then when Nick smiles at George, it's like the sun comes out, and George's voice is just so soft.
I love it.
And the way that they look at each other, ugh, I want to believe. And the ending sequence with Temperance, it gives me chills. Like, she bathes in the blood, you've got the crazy music, you've got the slow build of the voiceover up to her breaking the barrier. It's just so cool. Like, what a way to finish off a season. Season 2 honorable mentions. 206, The Riddle of the Broken Doll, the scene where they're just standing around in Nancy's kitchen around the corpse. If you have like one scene to show people to help them understand the characters, like, that is it. This is a perfect scene.
Yes, I am okay, but somebody dosed jelly legs over here.
210, The Spell of the Burning Bride, the lustrous storyline is hysterical, although if I'm being honest, it's mostly the scene with the boys in the claw. I physically cannot watch Nancy hitting on Tamora and Gil. It gives me such strong secondhand embarrassment, like I just have to skip over it, I can't do it.
You know what I need? Softer than I even imagined.
Pulse is racing too.
Hey, better idea. Why don't you both get out my restaurant? Please.
Alright, and that is it for seasons 1 and 2. Next time we'll be talking about my favorite episodes from seasons 3 and 4, but in the meantime, I'd love to hear from you guys. What are your favorite episodes, and why? Plus, I'd be curious to see if you guys can guess the upcoming episodes. Bye for now.
You drew a fish.